Hello, I'm Lance Santos and welcome to the special edition of Beyond the Game from the PyeongChang Winter Olympic Games. For the next 17 days, more than 2,000 athletes from across the globe will be here in South Korea competing for one thing: gold. With 102 medals up for grabs, all of the issues of North Korea, Russian doping and the bitter cold have melted away with a glorious opening ceremony welcoming the world to PyeongChang 2018. Okay, we get it. We understand winter sports may not be everybody's thing. From the curious case of curling to the sheer insanity of the ski jump, you could be confused somewhat in how this event captivates the attention of the globe. So to put your mind at ease, we have put together a friendly little guide to catch you up to speed. Welcome to Korea and welcome to PyeongChang, a ski resort in the Gangwon province, which is now the home of the Winter Olympics. There's been so much going on, it's easy to forget that we haven't even started just yet. So this is Beyond the Games guide to PyeongChang 2018.
First up, let's talk about where we are, PyeongChang. It's home to the Taebaek Mountains, which are the reason everyone's here. The Winter Games will be held across two areas: the PyeongChang Mountain Cluster, where all the skiing events take place, and the Gangneung skating venue on the eastern coast. 15 years ago, this was effectively all potato fields. But after two failed attempts at bidding for the Winter Games, the building of new facilities and a billion-dollar high-speed rail network, this province, which is considered the most remote in South Korea, won the rights to host the winter sports showpiece event.
The first problem they ran into was the name. It's awfully close to Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea. PyeongChang introduced a slight change in their name, capitalizing the C so that no athletes accidentally turn up to figure skate with Kim Jong-un. And that is the major issue looming large over these games: North Korea.
A few months ago, the world was rightly worried about a nuclear war breaking out. But fast forward a little, and the North Koreans will play along the South Koreans in the women's ice hockey team, and the two will march under a unified banner at the opening and closing ceremonies. What a difference a few weeks makes. So while the IOC pat themselves on the back for what will unlikely mean peace on the Korean peninsula, they are feeling the heat from another country, one they thought they'd got rid of: Russia.
The Russian doping saga, where to begin? Essentially, it boils down to this: Russia say they didn't do it. The International Olympic Committee and the world's anti-doping bodies say the government was behind a doping campaign that hit its peak at Sochi 2014. It's enough to make you give up on the Olympics already, isn't it?
So let's get to the good bit, the sport. On the ice, everyone is talking about how great the unified Korea team will be. But remember, we are missing the best of the best in the men's draw. The two main ice hockey leagues in the world, the North American one and Russia's, will not send their best players. They say it's just not worth it, and the sport gets nothing from sending guys like Big Swede Erik Karlsson and Sidney Crosby, which means the Canadian misses the chance to win a third Olympic gold medal. So maybe Korea does have a chance. The 2018 games are bigger and better than ever. There are new additions: big air snowboarding, mass start speed skating, which could cause carnage on the ice, and freestyle skiing. This means there are more medals across the event, which includes 102 in total. Hoping to take them home will be the names like Lindsey Vonn of the United States. The superstar of the slalom arrives at her fourth Olympic Games, hoping to get another gold after she missed out in Sochi due to injury. The world will be watching to see if Shaun White, another American loved across the extreme sports world, is back to win a third gold medal, and the hope of potentially making an appearance in the Summer Olympics in Tokyo in 2 years' time as a skateboarder, which would be an incredible feat. But the memories we all cherish the most from an Olympic Games is the underdogs, the minnows, and you don't have to go far to see some absolute crackers here in PyeongChang.
Remember the movie Cool Runnings? Well, this time it is the women's turn, yes. Jamaica, they have a bobsleigh team, and If that is not enough for you, then there's also lone efforts of athletes from Tonga, Eritrea, Kosovo and South Africa waving their national flags the best they can as the Olympic Games attempts to move on from all of the issues before and finally get down to the sport. Less than 9 hours before the beginning of the opening ceremony, Russian athletes were locked in a tense legal debate with the highest level of the sporting world to see if they could compete at this Olympic Games. The question of 47 Russian athletes was today quashed, but for those still here competing, the Russian flag will not fly at PyeongChang after they were banned by the International Olympic Committee. Sam Johnson explains why.
There's an expression that goes, "What's done in the dark will eventually come to light," to which we might add, especially when it comes to doping. In Russia, a state-sponsored doping program exposed the level of corruption at several games, including those at Sochi in 2014. It led to the country being banned from the Olympics, and following a further inquiry, the International Olympic Committee banned 43 Russians for life. But there was a silver lining for some athletes. The IOC invited 169 Russians to compete as independent athletes to the 2018 Winter Games. But then the Court of Arbitration for Sport dropped a bombshell a week before the Games. They overturned 28 of those lifetime bans.
This does not mean that these 28 athletes are declared innocent, but in their case, due to insufficient evidence, the appeals are upheld, the sanctions annulled, and their individual results achieved in Sochi are reinstated.
13 of those 28 athletes and 2 coaches then asked the IOC to compete in the Games, but the IOC's answer was clear.
The privilege to be invited requires more than just the absence of a sanction. So we have not invited them.
47 Russian athletes and coaches who were banned from the Games appealed to CAS on the decision, but CAS dismissed their appeals on Friday, hours before the opening ceremony.
The CAS arbitrators have considered that the process created by the IOC to establish an invitation list of Russian athletes to compete as Olympic athletes from Russia could not be described as a sanction, but rather as an eligibility decision.
Tension in the athletes' village over Russian participation is overshadowed here in South Korea by what happens less than 100 kilometers to the north, the border with North Korea. Beyond the game gained rare access to the demilitarized zone, the border between the two nations and the front line of a war that has never ended.
Sunrise in Seoul, South Korea's capital. Most visitors and athletes heading to the Winter Olympics in PyeongChang will pass through this city. But just a short drive away from this bustling metropolis lies the world's most dangerous border. TRT World has acquired rare access to film inside one of the most secret and guarded places on the planet. The Winter Games is the reason this border crossing is back in the spotlight. It has been the division between North and South since 1953. Never before has it hosted an Olympic Games less than 100 kilometers from a regime intent on flexing its nuclear muscle. North Korea's growing nuclear threat is a stark reminder of just how close South Korea's capital is to immense danger. It is something that the residents of Seoul have to deal with on a daily basis. It is also something that will immensely worry the Olympic organisers. We're about to head into the demilitarized zone. It is the area where North meets South. We will try and film what we can, but we have been told that any sudden movements or a camera pointed at the wrong person may end our tour very quickly. We're also reminded that North Korean soldiers, armed North Korean soldiers, will be watching our every movement from their side of the border. After a few checkpoints, we are into the demilitarized zone. Once you're inside the DMZ, it becomes clear that this area is hostile. Barbed wire lines the fences for 250 kilometers. These fields are said to be riddled with over 1 million active landmines. And thousands of soldiers stand guard watching each other's every move. The reality is that these two countries are at war. Over the years, defectors attempting to cross have been killed. Most recently, this North Korean soldier miraculously survived being shot 5 times before crossing over into South Korea. Right now, I'm standing in South Korea, but just a few meters away behind me in the middle of the blue buildings, there is a line, and on the other side, that is North Korea, where you possibly can see the bigger building in the background. It is a tense place to be, and the soldiers that you can see, the ones that guard this area every day, often come face to face with the enemy. It's worth noting as well that each soldier has to be above 5'9" and also has to have a black belt in Taekwondo. North Korean artillery is armed and pointed at the south, and if tensions were to escalate, this would likely once again become the front line, and Seoul is only a 45-minute drive away. This is not just a war fought with tanks and bullets, it's also a cultural battle too. Over my shoulder is the North Korean propaganda village. It was designed to try and entice South Koreans to defect over into North Korea. But actually, the big buildings behind me are just an illusion, really. The windows are painted on and there's no floors in between them. The North often plays, there's speakers set up all behind me, and throughout the day it'll play propaganda music, usually songs about their great leader. The South Koreans on this side of the border also play K-pop to try and irritate those on the other side of the border. While there are reasons to be hopeful,
diplomacy by sports, it's happened before, you know, ancient Greece.
the memories of what's happened aren't forgotten. When South Korea have hosted major sporting events in the past, North Korea has stoked fears of all-out war. Before the 1988 Seoul Olympic Games, 150 people were killed by North Korean agents who blew up a Korean air flight. In 2002, when the South co-hosted the FIFA World Cup, PyeongChang's patrol boats opened fire on a South Korean Navy ship. 6 South Koreans were killed. The US has been very critical of the North Korean regime, and often the war of the words is threatened to end in violence.
They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
The DMZ is a surreal place, strange and tense, but somehow normal to these soldiers. South Koreans have grown used to living in their neighbours' crosshairs, and the hope is that sport can now ease the tension and pave the way for peace. With North Korea committing to the Winter Olympics, some think it is a step in the right direction. But most South Koreans will tell you they've heard it all before.
Sport and politics is nothing new, as we've seen in the run-up to these Winter Games. But the two combined isn't always negative. There are moments where it can be a force for good. Paul Scott spoke to Joel Buzu, the president and founder of Peace and Sport.
We're going to see this unified women's ice hockey team competing at the Winter Games. How has that come about?
You know, I think it's very symbolic. When Pierre de Coubertin renovated the Olympic Games, he did it not to have a fantastic marketing success. He did it to celebrate the capacity of sport to bring people together. He did it for peace. And today we have, I think, a very significant contribution to peace. If you use sport in a good way, you can facilitate discussion, and I think you can really concretely facilitate the establishment of a long-lasting relationship, which can create peace at the end.
When you look at some of these successes, how do you transfer what I suppose in the global context would be described as micro successes onto the macro scene? How do you take the next step?
You know, I think it works from the top and it works from the bottom. People have to understand that sport is a solution. And by demonstrating on the ground, then it is more easy to make people from government understand that they should invest in sport, not only to showcase the national team, not only to get medals at the Olympics, but to bring people together through sport, to use inspired champions to bring people together through sport, to leave the streets, to leave the slums, and to join organized sport, because it is a guarantee that the lines will move, that the people will be inspired in another way.
So you believe that the fact that the two Koreas are going to be marching under one flag, the fact that there is this unified ice hockey team could be enough to act as the catalyst that will bring the two sides to the table at a much higher level?
Yeah, if I can make a joke, because it's winter games and we speak about ice hockey, I think it will break the ice. And it will break the ice between the athletes, but it could break the ice between the diplomats. Giving diplomats a reason to speak about sport when they cannot speak about anything, or when it has been so difficult to speak about other things, is a chance, is an opportunity. They will have the opportunity to meet each other, to exchange through sport, to speak about sport if they cannot speak about anything else, but I guess they will speak about other matters too.
Your organisation is neutral. Thomas Bach once told me it's vital that the IOC is seen to be politically neutral as well. In 2018, the world is getting smaller. There's more money in sport. Is that still possible for the IOC to remain politically neutral?
But I think they are demonstrating that. They are also an observer at the UN. You cannot find any side on which the IOC would be. Their side is sport. Their side is gathering people through sport. And the Olympic Games are the biggest, the most known gathering on the planet, above any other gathering. And this is sport. This is the pinnacle of sport.
You competed in Los Angeles in 1984. Prior to that, there was the boycott of the Moscow Olympics in 1980. Here we are in 2018. We've got the Olympics on the Korean Peninsula. The World Cup is in Russia. Is this the most, is sport more politicized now than it has been since perhaps when you were competing in the Cold War?
Sport has always been in danger to be used in a bad way with regard to politics. Look at the Olympic Games in 1936. But what is great today is that the games are in South Korea and there is no boycott. The World Cup, Football World Cup, will be in Russia, and I think there will be no boycott, because sport has been growing enough to be above a political division. And you lose more by not going to the Olympics than by going to the Olympics. In fact, it is adding in a soft way to diplomacy, and we should not miss the opportunity to use it.
Well, let's get rid of all of that political stuff and focus now on the sport, the reason we're all here. So let's take a quick look at the top 5 athletes to watch in PyeongChang.
When Jamaica qualified for the bobsleigh at the 1988 Games in Canada, a movie was made of their unlikely story. Fast forward 30 years and Africa has its first bobsleigh representatives. Perhaps Cool Runnings 2 will tell the story of Nigeria's success. Daria Domracheva is married to the most decorated Winter Olympian of all time. But Norway's Ola Einar Bjorndalen has failed to qualify for a 7th straight Winter Games. Instead, he'll be in the Belarusian delegation, offering support to his wife. She's looking to add to the 3 gold medals she won in the biathlon in Sochi 4 years ago. The sun-kissed sands of a Caribbean island might not be the obvious place to begin a skiing career, but Victor White has become Barbados' first ever Winter Olympian. He was born to a Barbadian father and a Finnish mother and grew up in Barbados and Sweden. Now White says he wants to become the best freestyle skier in the world. Could he bring a gold medal back to the Golden Beaches? At a time when US-Russian relations are at their lowest since the Cold War, Vic Wild's decision to compete for Russia instead of the US raised eyebrows. He's married to fellow snowboarder Alina Zavazina and applied for Russian citizenship in 2011. Following Russia's ban from PyeongChang for state-sponsored doping allegations, Wild and his wife will now be competing under the neutral IOC banner. The poster girl of American winter sports, Lindsey Vonn was a gold medalist in Vancouver in 2010, but missed the Games in Sochi because of an injury. Now at 33, she feels she has a point to prove in what could be her last Olympics.
At every Olympic Games, there is always a fairy tale story, and Turkish sports fans will be hoping they have the Cinderella moments of PyeongChang as they search for a first ever medal in their Winter Olympic history. Alper Ucha and Alyssa Agafonova are here at their second Olympics after Sochi 2014, and they're hoping they can do something special in South Korea.
It's amazing. First of all, it's an amazing experience as an athlete, and this is our second Olympics, so we feel grateful to be here and we feel proud for our country. So we're really happy right now.
Yeah, so far so good. What I can say is it's an amazing feeling, and I'm very proud to represent my country here in PyeongChang in Korea. Everybody is so friendly to us, and it's a very proud moment for us. And we started yesterday with our practices. What we are seeing from all officials, that they are always smiling, and it is such a different experience after Sochi.
I've been before here, but not exactly in this place. Of course, we love this country, and it's different. So it's really nice to to be inside and see other culture. So
my grandfather fought for NATO when they have the independence war for the South Korea to North Korea. So it's another proud moment for me that he has a medal, and my father gave it to me. And it is such an emotional time here in Korea. That's all I know from Korea. I always want to be in Korea, but this is the first time, and I really like it.
I mean, we did this in Sochi 2014 already, so it's of course it's special. It's still special for us, but it's the second time, and we know how it feels already.
Well, it's such an honor to be here. Especially last time in Sochi, I was the flag carrier, so it was emotional, and again it was a very proud moment. I cried last time when I holding the flag. It was a very honorable time, and I'm feeling the second time here in Korea. That's such a wonderful and amazing atmosphere here.
South Korea are expected to win most of their Olympic medals at the Olympic Park, where the ice events take place. Beyond the Game went down there to check it all out.
So plenty of anticipation then here in Korea, and this is where actually the host nation are expect to have the most success, because here at the Olympic Park is where the ice events take place, and traditionally of course South Korea do very well in those ice events. So let's now give you a bit of a tour of the Olympic Park here in Gangneung. We start over there, you can probably see it over my right shoulder. The Gangneung Hockey Centre, where you guessed it right, the ice hockey will take place. USA, Canada, probably expected to do very well there, you would have thought, in the ice hockey. Spin you around, broadcast centre over there. Over here, this is expected to be the scene where South Korea do very well indeed. The Oval, it's called, and this is where the speed skating takes place. And South Korea, as we know, traditionally very, very strong at the speed skating. The Dutch, they're expected to do very well there too as well. Spin you around a little bit more, the ice arena. Now this is where the figure skating will take place. You know, the likes of Canada, USA, South Korea possibly might do pretty well there. Even Japan, they've traditionally done pretty well. So this is the main hub, just about 200 metres that way is also the curling centre. Again, Canada expected to do pretty well. Maybe even Team GB might be expecting a medal or two there. Speaking of medal prospects, how are the host nation expected to do?
Short track speed skating is going to be the main event for South Korea. 8 gold medals at stake. I think they're hoping to win at least 5 or 6 from short track. Speed skating, we've got a skater named Lee Sang-hwa. She's the 2-time reigning champion in the 500 meters in the women's race. She's going to go for 3rd straight gold medal in that event, so that's a big event.
And there's actually been a bit of a concern up in the mountains about the lack of snow, because at this time of year it gets so cold in this region, they don't actually get a lot of snowfall. It's too cold for snow, as it were. But don't worry, the organisers have thought about that. They've shipped in snow cannons at great expense, and so they can, if they need to, create this stuff artificially. Organisers here in PyeongChang really have thought about everything. So the scene is set, let the games begin.
So the talking is over. The teams are finalised, and hopefully we won't have to hear the word CAS again this Olympic Games. It is now over to the athletes to do what they do best. I'm Lance Santos, and this has been a Beyond the Games special from PyeongChang, South Korea for the Winter Olympics of 2018. Thanks for watching.
Beyond the Game. Brought to you by Turkish Airlines.